Overdrive today, we check out a silent yet angrier Porsche Taycan and ruffle some feathers as we pit the latest Kawasaki Ninja ZX-6R against a decade-old favorite, Triumph Daytona. Hello and welcome to Overdrive. I am Soini Dant. The Porsche Taycan's entrance into the automotive realm has been nothing short of an electrifying saga. In fact, 4 years ago, when it entered the automotive sector, it turned out to be an emblem for Porsche's ambitious electrification plans. Now there is a new one, and on the face of it, it does look like a midlife makeover, but a lot has changed under its skin. Here's Rohit with all the details.
The Porsche Taycan came about 4 years ago, and it instantly showcased the German sports car maker's prowess at creating electric cars. You know, the typical aerodynamic shape of a Porsche, or the lack of grills and air dams at the front because Porsches are typically rear-engined, or that magic potion when it comes to razor-fast reflexes and that telepathic handling. All of these things are characteristic to the steeds that come out of Stuttgart. So adapting all of that for a fast, four-door electric vehicle wasn't really rocket science, and the Taycan delivered. In fact, Porsche have delivered over 150,000 of these around the globe, out of which about 191 are delivered in India. That amounts to about 10% of their local sales. Those kind of numbers coming for a premium, expensive, four-door electric like this is no joke. Now, we can always argue that it was easy pickings for the Taycan back then because there was hardly any competition. But in today's times, all the German luxury car makers have varied options across varied body styles, and then you have the Asian options or even cars from Korea that are giving you excellent performance. So for the Taycan to still maintain that benchmark as the best electric vehicle you can buy, they needed to do a lot more than a simple nip and tuck job for its midlife makeover. Porsche's decided that rather than fiddling around the edges, they would rather take a chainsaw to the Taycan's refresh. So what you get is a Taycan that accelerates more rapidly, charges with increased speed and stability, and offers more range than before. For example, the Taycan Turbo S in its latest guise is not merely provoking its petrol-powered cousins, but is now blitzing past them, hitting the ton in 2.4 seconds. In India, the Taycan Turbo will lead the charge, catapulting from 0 to 100 in a swift 2.7 seconds. And even the more sedate offerings, like the Taycan 4S and the base Taycan, still deliver more verve and vigor than before, with more power and quicker acceleration. The increase in acceleration across the board is attributable to a rise in system output. The base model alone sees a jump of 60 kilowatt, while the Turbo flexes its muscles with an astonishing 884 PS. The visual cues of the Taycan's evolution are subtle yet significant. Porsche has finished the design by sharpening the aesthetics. The flattened headlights and the broadened front wings articulate the Taycan's stance, making it appear assertive and wide. The rear end, while subtly refreshed, is accentuated by the Porsche logo in a new illuminated guise. This little crease that you see right on top of the headlight, that wasn't there on the outgoing car. This one improves the aerodynamic efficiency. And the tires on these are the Pirelli P0R. Now these are specifically designed with Porsche for the Taycan. These are lower resistance than the outgoing car and yet manage to give you better grip around winding roads. All of this combined gives you better efficiency. In fact, the wheels and tires alone are contributing to 40 kilometers extra range on the overall claim. Speaking of range, the new Taycan climbs to an optimistic 678 kilometers on the WLTP cycle, flaunting a 35% range improvement. This is courtesy of the collective efforts of enhanced aerodynamics, an optimized powertrain, advanced energy recuperation, and the latest range management software. The Taycan's performance battery too has been on the growth spurt, ballooning from a respectable 93 kilowatt-hour to a more substantial 105 kilowatt-hour, and yet being lighter than before. Equally worthy of note is the Taycan's enhanced recharging capabilities.
Another bit of improvement that Porsche has managed in the Taycan is with the charging times. So now you can have up to 320 kilowatt fast charging. That's if the charger supports it, if the infrastructure supports it. But when you do, what Porsche have done is they have increased the number of minutes for which you can use that kind of fast charging. So in about 18 minutes, you can go from 10 to 80%. What they've done now is employed better thermal management with the batteries, which essentially means that the batteries can stay cooler for longer during the fast charging period. Now, when you are at highway speeds like I am at right now, when you have a slow-moving vehicle or a long vehicle in front of you, what you can engage is the boost mode. This little switch right here in the middle of the drive mode, select on the satellite button, press that, and for 10 seconds, you get a massive boost of power. 70 kilowatt to be precise, for 10 seconds. So you can quickly pull your overtake, then get back into your lane.
This makes maneuvers like overtaking, corner exits, and just accelerating in a straight line more thrilling. The new Taycan's ride quality significantly benefits from the introduction of the active ride function. This new feature builds upon the plush air suspension of the previous Taycan, which is now standard, but the addition of active ride brings new dimensions to the Taycan's handling and comfort.
Air suspension is now standard on the Taycan, but what you can also opt for is active ride. So essentially, it begins with opening the door. Whenever you open the door, the car is going to raise itself by about 50 millimeters, and that is to make the ingress and egress a little bit more convenient. Now, we've seen this tech in the past. What active ride also gets you is an active lean control. So essentially, when you're approaching winding roads, the car is going to lean into the corner like a motorcycle. You also have the active skyhook, which essentially is going to only let the wheels move up and down while the rest of the body remains stable. Again, something that you've heard us say in the past with some of the other vehicles.
Switching to sport mode alters the Taycan's character to that of a traditional Porsche, allowing you more natural chassis movements and providing that familiar Porsche driving dynamics. Porsche's focus on a holistic driving experience, including superior driving dynamics, luxurious interiors, and the brand's prestigious heritage, offers a more comprehensive package that appeals to a broad spectrum of consumers. Porsche's commitment to real-world usability is evident in the Taycan's increased range and reduced charging times, addressing common concerns like range anxiety and the inconvenience of long charging periods. These enhancements cater not only to the practical aspects of owning an EV, but also align well with the expectations of Porsche's customer base. At launch, Porsche will introduce the Taycan base, there'll be the Taycan 4S and the Taycan Turbo. Will the Taycan GT arrive to our shores? Well, only time will tell. If there is enough demand, it might actually come there. The 911 GT3 RS is there, so why not the GT? I think it might make for an excellent track tool if you want to go that electrification way.
Porsche has been pushing the boundaries of performance with each and every model of the Taycan that it has on offer today. And the fastest one of them all is the YZ Pack, which goes from 0 to 100 kmph in just 2.1 seconds. That's blisteringly quick. We'll get you that story on next week's show. We'll take a very quick break here on the show for now though. Come back because on the other side we pit a middleweight super sport motorcycle, the hottest one there is today, against one that was hot a decade ago. Stay with us, you're watching Overdrive. Welcome back here with us on Overdrive. Now, how much has the middleweight supersport motorcycle segment evolved over the past 10 years? To answer this very loaded question, we have pit the 10-year-old Triumph Daytona against the hottest motorcycle in its segment today, the Kawasaki Ninja ZX-6R.
If you are shopping in the middleweight supersport category, often characterized as the 600s, your search will inevitably lead you to a Kawasaki dealership in India because the ZX-6R is your only option. Of course, the tide may change in the future. You might have one more option should Honda introduce the tempting new CBR 600RR to our shores. If you want something mellower, something that's easier, more comfortable, then you could look at something like the Ninja 650 from the same stable or something like the Honda CBR 650R if you want twice the cylinders. And looking over the horizon, there are vehicles like the Yamaha R7 and the ridiculous Triumph Daytona 660, which are going to sort of give you some bit of a promise. Now this scenario reminds me of exactly 10 years back when the Daytona 675R was the only middleweight supersport option that you had in the country. A decade since, Have things really evolved? Has the super sport genre in the middleweight segment really gone ahead by leaps and bounds?
With changing market demands, technological advancements and regulatory pressures, manufacturers have often been forced to adapt and evolve their offerings.
Apart from being middleweight super sport machines, there's another common thread for these two motorcycles. Both of them go against the convention and employ unconventional engine configurations when you compare it to the typical 599cc inline-4 configuration that we see in the super sport segment.
The Triumph Daytona 675 boasts of a potent 675cc three-cylinder engine, delivering around 126 horsepower. This power plant, while not as outright powerful as some of its competitors, offers a unique blend of torque-rich performance and a linear power delivery. Triumph's engineering prowess is evident in the Daytona 675's short-stroke design, top-notch components, and a refined tuning, resulting in exhilarating performance on both the street as well as the track. The engine's ability to rev freely and eagerly rewards riders with a thrilling riding experience, making it a favorite among enthusiasts seeking a dynamic edge.
In fact, this engine is so good that it has laid the foundation for all the 660cc entry-level Triumphs, all the way up to the 765, the Street Triple RS, and even the Moto 3 machines. In fact, that Street Triple RS, as we found out last year in our ride at Jerez, it's such a good track machine, such a potent track machine and a potent all-rounder that I'm not surprised it has led to the death of this track-bred Daytona.
In contrast to Triumph's Triple, the 2024 Kawasaki ZX-6R inherits the legacy of its predecessors, featuring a 636cc inline-4 power plant. While the engine configuration has been the staple of the ZX-6R lineup for years now, the 2024 iteration, however, fails to deliver significant advancements in power output or technological innovation, boasting of a mere 129 PS, which is humble for a gap of 10 years.
For 2024, in fact, the ZX-6R loses a horsepower or two because it uses different camshafts with a lower lift profile, shorter duration, etc. compared to its predecessor. The gains are, of course, in the emissions department because this is now compliant with the stricter emission standards.
With no option for a larger engine displacement, the ZX-6R relies on innovative solutions like these to meet emission requirements. This also includes a revised exhaust layout featuring a larger exhaust pre-chamber and a revised positioning for the O2 sensor closer to the exhaust ports, facilitating more efficient readings and cleaner combustion. It isn't a very fuel-efficient motor though, and we struggle to go beyond 13 km to a litre on our spirited rides, while the Daytona still managed about 17 km to a litre consistently.
The ZX-6R offers a really respectable performance, no complaints against that. But it lacks the grunt, the peppiness, that aggression that you get with the Daytona. The low-end performance is much better on the ZX-6R, but when it comes to the mid-range or the top end, it doesn't feel as sharp as the Daytona. Both of these engines have a 15,000 RPM red line. The Daytona's engine will scream all its way to the red line, and even in the top gear, it managed to reach in that similar zone. However, for top gear on this motorcycle, after about 13,000 RPM, the performance just seems to taper down. Those final 2,000 RPM or so, it just feels a bit hollow.
So while Kawasaki has made minor tweaks and enhancements to improve emissions compliance and fuel efficiency, enthusiasts may yearn for more substantial updates to keep pace with the evolving industry standard. It's quicker off the mark though and posts quicker 0 to 100 times than the Daytona by almost a second. The traction control also helps put down the power in a better fashion, and this Daytona has lost a bit of horsepower given its age now.
We're not done with this comparison test just yet. More on the two motorcycles after this very short break. Welcome back, you're watching Overdrive. Now 10 years is a long time in this day and age of technological advancements, right? So how much of that has impacted in terms of the middleweight supersport motorcycle segment in India? Let's get back to that story.
Cutting-edge tech, electronic wizardry, these are pivotal aspects of modern-day motorcycles. My decade-old Triumph Daytona 675, however, electronic aids are rudimentary. ABS, of course, is appreciated, but otherwise there is nothing really to write home about. No riding modes, no traction control, nothing of that sort.
The positive way to look at it is that the simplicity ensures a pure, unadulterated, and a more engaging riding experience. You're immersing yourself in the thrill of motorcycling without relying on electronic crutches. On the other hand, the 2024 ZX-6R embraces the digital age, but without completely letting go of that old-school charm.
There's no IMU or any fancy electronics, so while that will keep the purists happy, it also makes sure that it ticks all the right boxes for safety, like ABS, traction control, which is primarily what you need for riding in our conditions.
The vibrant TFT display will let you cycle between 4 riding modes that alter power output and traction control intervention.
I think by not incorporating complicated stuff like slide control, wheelie control, etc., I think they're keeping things simple. It's not overwhelming for a lot of riders, which may be a good thing, especially for this particular segment, because you see, they may not be as big experts as the typical liter class buyer. So which I think is really good, because it still ticks all the right boxes for safety, like I said, and at the same time doesn't rob the riding fun out of a machine like this. So I think it achieves a really nice balance.
When it comes to carving corners and attacking apexes, suspension and handling prowess play a crucial role. The Triumph Daytona refined this bit back then by offering 2 options: the standard bike with the Kayaba suspension and an R model which set the bar higher with its Öhlins suspension components and Brembo brakes.
The suspension is adjustable on both the models, the R as well as the standard 675, and it allowed riders to fine-tune the suspension settings to their weight, to their riding style, to their riding environment, etc. The Öhlins was of course better for the track, but also very challenging to overhaul in a small market like ours.
But whether it is riding on twisty mountain roads or tearing up the racetrack, the Daytona 675 remains a benchmark for riding dynamics even today, offering a precise feedback and predictable behavior that inspires riders to push their limits. In comparison, the ZX-6R showcases evolutionary rather than revolutionary improvements in suspension and handling. While its Showa suspension setup offers a commendable adjustability and feedback, some riders may find its chassis dynamics lacking the finesse and the lightness of the Daytona 675. However, the monoblock Nissan brakes work exceptionally well, and even with the electronic aids limited to traction control and ABS, the ZX-6R delivers a competent and predictable riding experience.
I think riders who are seeking a good balance between comfortable riding ergonomics and nice performance are definitely going to like the size of the ZX-6R and the compliance of that suspension, whether you're taking it out for spirited rides or for leisurely commutes in the city. All of that, it will do quite well. It's only when you take it to the track where the ergonomics may or may not be to your liking.
When you opt for a liter class machine with over 200 horsepower, the intensity of the riding experience can get overwhelming. Handling such raw power demands a keen sense of control and physical stamina. This is where the middleweight machines provide a welcome alternative. They aren't as demanding, and even with lesser electronics, they are relatively easy to tame.
The ZX-6R doesn't feel as light and nimble as the Daytona. In fact, it does feel quite big between the legs, but at the same time, the rider's triangle is surprisingly cramped for my height of 5 feet 8. I've often found that while trying to tuck down or whatever, my elbows are still sticking out. I'm unable to get that proper grip. But that said, while cornering, the large tank, the large chassis, they offer a substantial anchor point to be able to nicely lock in. So in terms of the cornering stability, that definitely helps.
The Daytona 675 excels with better build quality, and even the new models like the Street Triple RS feel more premium than this Kawasaki. And then there is the raw character, the agility, and the rider engagement, which makes the Daytona enticing even today. The ZX-6R has plenty going for it too. It shines with its advanced electronics, convenience features, and modern aesthetics, replete with LED lighting all around. But, and there is always a but.
The bottom line is the advancement in technology only feels a little incremental, nothing compared to what we've seen in the liter class.
The ZX-6R still feels simple for its time, the way the Daytona did back in its day. But there is beauty in that simplicity.
It does the job of introducing riders to speed and improving their high performance skills both on the road and on the track as well. And that simplicity also shows in its pricing. It offers an excellent value proposition, just the way the Daytona did back in the day. In fact, if you were to compare the pricing of the outgoing Daytona back then versus the pricing of the ZX-6R today, there's not much of a gap in terms of inflation numbers. You know, look at where the Street Triple is, where the previous one was and where the RS is today. You will know what I mean. So from that perspective, I think even though the options are limited, even though you have only one option, it ticks all the right boxes. So I really don't care that there are no other options. As long as there is a super sport middleweight machine that you can buy today, you and I should be happy.
With that, it's a wrap on this week's edition of Overdrive. But remember, you can stay in touch with us through our various social media platforms, and you can write to us on YouTube as well. We'll see you next week. Until then, drive and ride safe.